Too many of us are not living our dreams because we're living our fears. Les Brown.
Are you ready to make the most of the only life you have? To make smart money choices focused on achieving what you care about most? Here to help you balance living well today without sacrificing your tomorrow is the retirement answer man, Roger Whitney.
Hey there, welcome to the first conversation with Kim and Joe about their ideal retirement. This is the first conversation of Retirement Plan Live 2017, the live case study with a fellow listener. So what we're going to hear this week is Kim and I framing in what their ideal retirement is for her and Joe. Now, you'll notice in the conversation we have, I still sort of flip-flop between Joe and Andy. So be aware of that. When you hear Andy and you hear Joe, they're one and the same people. It's just me being an idiot. Anyway, so we're going to hear today, Kim and I discuss their ideal retirement. Now, as I was listening to it, doing it some editing, a couple things popped out to me that I wanted to point out before I played this for you. First off, it's interesting how we had to track back and dream a little bit bigger about certain things. It sounds like Kim and Andy are naturally fairly frugal planner types, and it's very easy to sacrifice things almost subconsciously without even realizing it. And we had to backtrack a couple times to help them dream a little bit bigger. The second was, it's so hard to determine the cost of so many of these things when we're planning so far in the future. Now, we want to be smart about it, but at that initial stage, when you're dreaming up your ideal retirement, you really want to wag it. You want to just have a wildly awesome guess to start with, rather than go down a rabbit hole of getting the, as close to the quote unquote exact number as you can. There's plenty of time to start dialing those things in as you go through the process. But at the initial stage, you don't want to get bogged down in all that stuff because we're trying to figure out what kind of life you want to have in your freedom years or your retirement years. And the last thing, at least I noticed from our conversation, was how a lot of the things have been thought about in passing, but not really framed in to, oh yeah, we are going to have to take care of a son's wedding. We might want to make sure we account for that. And oh yeah, inflation, that is an important thing to calculate in. So this is a good conversation. So this is a special edition for Retirement Plan Live. Now, if you are signed up for 6 Shots Saturday, you will receive a summary of Kim and Joe's ideal retirement. If you're not signed up, you're going to need to go to rogerwhitney.com and fill in the box of your name and your email so you start receiving those emails. That's the only way you're going to get a summary of the plan we're building for Kim and Joe and be able to follow along and start to see some structure for your own life. So let's get this disclaimer out of the way and get to our conversation as Kim and I dream up their ideal retirement. All right, time for that all-important disclaimer. This is only for education and informational purposes. No advice is being given here. I don't know you well enough to give you advice, and you don't know me that well. I only work as a fiduciary for clients. So before you make any decisions, make sure you talk to your financial advisor, your tax advisor, and or your legal advisor. Now, with this Retirement Plan Live, realize Kim, Joe, and Andy are not their real names. We're changing a lot of the information to help hide their identity, and they fully agreed to go through this process. But again, helpful hints and education. Now let's go talk to Kim and figure out what they want to do with their life. Well, welcome back, Kim. Now is the time to dream up that ideal retirement. You ready to go?
Yeah.
All right. So you are 58. Andy is working and 54. So first off, what's the target date for Andy? What are we looking at?
Probably between 60 and 61 is the age that we're looking at him retiring.
Okay. And now when you say that, is that something that he's like, man, I'm out of here at 61? Or is it just, oh, this sort of seems like a good date? Does he have any thoughts on that?
Sometimes I think he's hanging on by his fingernails. We've talked about him maybe getting a different job that because he thinks he'll continue working in some level, but it would be nice to have a job where it doesn't matter what it pays, something that's more fulfilling. So right now, yeah, I think he's pretty much on board with that, but we've looked at different scenarios, and right now it looks like maybe just sticking with this job for the next 6 to 7 years tops would be the best way to go.
Okay. I guess the frustrations come out from the career aspect of it because of what that all demands.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, and there's been a lot of changes, and there's a lot of changes that sort of change your job and outside of your control, and that can really be frustrating, I think. And but it is the highest years of salary. There's some good benefits and vacation accrued and all of those things that really make it compelling to want to stay.
That is sort of the trade-off, isn't it? Because you're right in that peak earnings years, but you're also right where, man, I've been doing this thing a long time and I'm tired of it a little bit.
Yeah, I just kind of feel for him because in some ways my life is easier, but we've talked about me going back to work, but I probably would not make the money I made when I worked, before my son started school. So what I'm trying to do is just maximize our investments and stay on top of that, reduce expenses, try to, figure out what this is all going to look like in addition to doing other things. Like I like to do handiwork around the house. So I try to do that so we don't have to call somebody in to do something.
Okay. Now that's a good question for you too. Now that your son is out of the house,
mm-hmm.
and your super volunteer cape might be hanging in the closet. Are you still doing that, or what are you doing?
I do a certain amount of that. I've had a part-time job for a couple of years that was busier earlier on, but now it looks like it's sort of drying up. And so I'm easing myself out of that. And I am trying to figure out, what do I do as far as, is it important for me to bring money in? And I don't know that, I hate to sound like this because it sounds really weird to say this, but it's like, I'm not sure that's really going to contribute as much as I might be able to contribute by not working. And like I said, doing a lot of the things around the house that need to be fixed up, because we do want to sell this house probably, I don't know, when we retire, before we retire, we're not sure.
Okay. And we'll get into that a little later on, for sure. How do you foresee, your purpose, your reason for waking up every day and those types of things? How do you think that evolving for you?
That's a good question, because I think of myself as always having, and I do always have something to do, but I guess it's in having those like sort of cocktail conversations where it's like, well, what do you do? I struggle with that because I always feel like I need to have a really good answer. And I have to tell you that I've worked since I was 14 in some capacity, except for these, the volunteer years, which frankly, I have to tell you, took up as much time as having a job based on the things that I got into. But I'm feeling a little selfish, to be honest with you. I'm trying to focus on my health, which I haven't always done. I'm doing a pretty good job of it right now. And so there is a part of me that feels a little like maybe I don't have to come up with an answer for that.
I think you're right. I think that is very smart. And I think this is the period where you get to, with your son off to college, you're able to do this a little bit more before Joe. You get to reimagine what the rest of your life will be, and you don't have to figure that out right now, right?
Right.
Okay. So you talked about longevity. So let's talk about you. So let's assume you are retired, which is a weird word. What longevity, explain that a little bit more to me.
Both of my parents are still alive, and my dad is 92. My mother is 86, I think. So my mother is the youngest of a large family, and she had many members who lived into their 80s, some into their 90s. My father, most of his siblings all lived into their 90s, except one who was a heavy smoker, and he was a big, he loved to go out and dance, and then one day he dropped dead, which frankly, I choose that.
Not the heavy smoking part, but
not the heavy smoking part, the dropping dead when you decide it's your time to go.
On the dance floor.
But anyway, yeah, so there's a lot of longevity. My grandparents, even in their 90s and 80s, and if you think about it, that was like the 60s when they died. 60s and 70s. So even medical care wasn't even that great. And they still lived to, 90 and 94.
All right. So we need to think about this. So, a 60-year-old, which you are not, has a 50-50 chance of living past 90. So it sounds like with your gene pool, that's a good probable. And I normally plan for the lady to live to 93. It sounds like we may need to extend that.
Yeah, maybe.
So I'm going to do that to start just because of some of the things that you talked about. So what about Joe and the longevity for he and his family?
That one's a little trickier because of lifestyle things that I don't think were in there. But just to boil it down, his father passed away in his 70s, but he had a lot of long-standing illnesses that, frankly, were lifestyle illnesses. His grandfather, same, like 60s. Again, I don't know much about his grandfather, but there are some lifestyle issues that may get in the way for him. But I really don't know what to project.
Okay, so he's more normal in the gene pool end of it.
Yeah, probably.
Okay. So normally where I put Min living to is age 91. So I think we can stick with that for now, if you're comfortable with that.
That's fine.
Okay. So if you can visualize between now and you being 100, we have a 40-year timeline that we need to solve for.
Wow.
Right? So you will be 100 in 2060.
Yeah.
So we have a long timeline to figure out. Now, obviously, Joe's going to be working for some of those years. We're projecting if he retires at age 61, that's going to be 2021. We have to figure out how we're going to solve for that timeline. And now we have to decide, okay, what kind of spending are you going to have in that timeline? So let's start off with, the basic need. And again, this is just going to be a wildly awesome guess. Right? So we're just going to wag a lot of these numbers because some of them are off in the future and it's just impossible to know.
Mm-hmm.
So if you had to wag it today for those basic needs of paying for the house and, groceries and things like that, what would you say you spend on an annual basis?
I'm trying to take out for what we put aside. And so you're just talking not taxes, not insurance and all that, or?
Yeah, not health insurance, but just the, normal living. We'll work on travel and all that stuff separate.
Probably about, I don't know, 60. I'm totally guessing 65 to 70,000.
Okay. So this is the dream part. So we'll put say 75.
Right.
And this is a number, honestly, that even people that keep budgets really can't pinpoint as easily. We get so busy in just living, even with Quicken and things like that. This is the number that most people have a really hard time dialing in. So don't feel bad. And we're writing all this stuff in pencil. So as we evolve in this conversation, we can change these things at any time.
Okay.
So in all the numbers that we're going to be talking about, they're all going to be after-tax dollars, and we'll be adjusting for inflation going on. Okay?
Okay.
Right now, you're living on Joe's salary, and then we'll assume that when he passes away and you're still living, because that's how we have it modeled anyway, that the spending goes down by a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is a 40-year timeline, we want to make sure we take care of inflation. So what we'll do is we're going to use a 4.07 inflation rate. So if you're spending $75,000 today, that's going to increase every year in the model by 4.07%.
Okay.
So where that inflation rate comes from, because that seems sort of high in today. Today inflation technically isn't that high. Mm-hmm. That's just the consumer price index since 1970. So we're just going to use what the average CPI has been over the last, 40, 50 years. So the second thing is healthcare. We got to make sure healthcare is part of this basic need, right?
Right.
Right now, it's being paid by Joe's work. I'm assuming it's a family plan.
Right.
So if he retires at age 61, you guys aren't going to qualify for Medicare yet, so we'll have some private insurance. Does he have a plan through his company that will extend past his leaving?
We haven't looked specifically, but I kind of doubt that it would, unless it was some sort of COBRA situation, which
okay.
I get, I don't know, I guess is the answer.
Okay. No, yeah, which is the normal answer. So we have to factor in private insurance, that you'll have to buy some kind of private insurance. And Lord knows what that's going to be. We don't even know what it's going to be for next year. with the new administration. So we're going to wag that, and we're going to put that the annual cost of insurance for each of you prior to Medicare is going to be $5,000 a piece. And then we'll factor in some out-of-pocket expenses and things like that.
Okay.
So at the end of this, when we define this ideal retirement, I'll send you an input summary so you can say, oh, yeah, those are correct. And then anybody that's listening that's part of the Six Shot Saturday will get that summary along with them so they can see all the assumptions that are built into what Medicare is going to cost that at least we use in our practice right now. Okay, so
the cost during the Medicare years?
Yeah, because we have to factor those in as well. Right. So the models that I use has a database, so we're going to assume that you get Part B, Part D, and the supplement and all that other stuff.
I will say that if he does wait till 61 to retire, I should be right at Medicare, so it would really just be him.
Yeah. So, yeah.
But I mean, in a perfect world, if we could figure out a way for him to retire at, say, 58, that would be awesome.
So 58 is really the awesome number. Well,
yeah, I guess I buried the lead. I don't know. It's a dream, but now that you said 40 years that we have to come up with money, I got scared.
So we need to put that in because right now we're dreaming big.
Right. Okay. That's our big dream.
58. Okay.
That's my big dream. But yeah, that comes with it, a lot more insurance years and.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's the hard part of dreaming big on the front end is because we get reasonable quick. Mm-hmm. Oh, we can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's one of the biggest barriers people have is they compromise before they even know it's possible. And I don't want to do that.
Yeah. And I'd say my personality is much more, let's delay the gratification almost to the point where it's like, never realize, whereas my husband balances me. He's much better at like, let's enjoy ourselves. Let's have some fun. And, I'm a little too serious. So.
And so I have a question about that balance because I encountered something like that the other day. I'm going to call you frugal. You're the responsible one, right?
Well, I'm not saying he's irresponsible, but yeah, right.
Well, yeah, but he's more live for today a little bit more than you are, and you're a little bit more let's delay gratification for tomorrow. Is that a better way of saying it?
He goes along pretty well, but you know what I mean by that? It's like I forget to have fun.
Yes, I totally get what you're saying. Now, when you guys have those discussions, do you have them in a healthy way?
I think so. If he reminds me, I will do it. But because I'm the planner of, so many things, like even including vacations, and I am pretty much the one that touches the bills and everything. I think it would be helpful if there was a little bit more balance in us both knowing what the financials are to make those decisions.
Okay.
So sometimes they're healthy, sometimes they're not. Sometimes we're having an argument about something that's not even to do with whatever we're arguing about. And it's really about somebody got their feelings hurt because we said that we couldn't go, I don't know.
Well, that is the part of, the one that looks at all the numbers all the time usually is the one that is thinking about the future, right? In my household, that's me. That's just delegation of duties, and we do that all the time. I clean the kitchen, she does laundry. We just naturally fall into these roles.
Right.
I guess what I was going for is, if he likes to live more today and you're always thinking about tomorrow, that's a tension, right? Between today and tomorrow. But those superpowers of today versus tomorrow can be used for good, but they can also really create resentment and friction.
Right. And I think if it were more dramatic, like if he was more like speaking up about, let's go do this, let's go do that. He doesn't really though. And I think in some ways, both of us deny ourselves.
Okay.
And I think that we need to get maybe a little more balance on both sides because I think he knows that it might create some tension. So he won't bring it up. And that's, I just feel like then nobody gets what they want. And so there's definitely some work that needs to be done there, but it's not so much that it creates tension, but it's possibly because we just don't even allow ourselves to dream as much as we should.
Okay. At this point in the process, I'm going to tell you already had to do it once and backtrack and give me that 58 rather than 61. So we're thinking big right here. And it's okay if what we think of doesn't work because then we can prioritize.
Okay.
Okay. So we got the basic living expenses. We have health care. What else have you come up with in terms of things you want, the spice of life to add to that base?
I don't know if it counts for anything, but it's like we really would like to relocate at some point. But right now we've decided that might be too difficult to do with his job. We hoped we could do it and have him work from home some, but so I would like to get settled into another home and start building our community. But I don't know if that's really what you're talking about.
Okay, so that's sort of a aspirational wish. Let's get to, so think in terms of when he retires at 58. You mentioned travel, so that would be a good spice of life. So let's start there, and we'll move to the house. We'll make sure we touch that. But let's talk about travel. So when you're traveling in retirement, what kind of travel do you do? Is it worldwide rich traveling, or is it road trip Holiday Inn traveling?
Well, I will say I have sort of an A, B, and C bucket of travel, and it depends on how much money we have. So on years that we feel like we're a little more flush, we probably go abroad. And I have a bunch of different things we'd like to do here too. So yeah, we do have some, big trips, maybe Italy or Ireland and those types of places.
Okay, so let's say he's retired on an annual basis. What do you think a travel budget would be?
Well, at one point I was thinking 10,000, but now I'm kind of thinking if I really want to swing for the fences, probably more like 15 or 20.
Okay.
And especially if we could include our son, and if our son has a wife or whatever, it's kind of fun, I think, when he can have somebody to come along too.
Oh, yes, totally. Okay, we'll put 20,000. And then for how many years when both of you are retired? Do you think?
Well, I will say realistically, we wouldn't do that every year. If it's 58, I would think we'd try to take a trip maybe every other year for, I don't know. I don't even know if we would do it every other year because it's exhausting to try to plan these things, but probably for about 15 years.
Okay. So
maybe every third year. I don't know. So
let's put 20,000 a year occurring every 2 years for 8 occurrences.
Right.
As a placeholder. Now, would you be doing annual traveling, just, a weekend here, things like that?
Yeah, I mean, we have family, but that really wouldn't be a big budget buster, for that. But the other thing that I'd love to do, because we kind of live in a hot area, is to go to like an Airbnb for maybe, frankly, if he was retired, I would love to immerse myself into a community for like a month. And it would be like Maine, and, you'd see the lobster guys or Oregon, and be on the Oregon coast and go to the wineries and things like that. I think that would be pretty cool.
Hey, that's my dream.
Is it really? Yes. I'm sorry. I didn't realize that.
Okay, you can have it too. Yeah, that's exactly what I want to do. My wife and I want to do is go immerse ourselves in communities. That's a great idea.
Yeah, find a walkable, bikeable. Yeah, that would be really great, because in a way because we've done some Airbnb. In fact, I just did one last week, and you see an area completely differently if you're in sort of this like neighborhood and a home even. And it's been really a great experience for us.
Okay, so let's define what that would look like. Let's wag that one. So let's say, would you do that, say, every year?
If it worked out well, I think we'd probably have to kind of zone in on, because I don't really want to commit to a month. The thing about Airbnb is you have to pay for it, like when you book it, and you don't want to be stuck for a month in a place that you don't really care for. But yeah, I think every year, and we might even be able to start doing it before he retires, because he has so much vacation, he could easily take a 2-week break. So we could at least do 2 weeks or.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what would that cost, let's say, for 2 weeks? Let's just take what you just recently did, if you know the numbers off the top of your head.
Yeah, if you, depending on where you do it, I'm trying to think. What got me thinking of it is I happen to be noticing their bookings, and they would give a discount for a monthly rate, and as much as 20% at times.
Okay, so what would that be, you think?
So let's say $3,000 or $3,500, something like that.
So let's say you did that every year, $3,000, or we'll do $3,500 for, let's say, 10 years?
Yeah, I think that sounds good.
Okay, and I'm going to start everything at retirement, because I'm going to guess that if you do things prior, you're cash flowing it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right, exactly.
Okay. Now, and I'm going to come back to that. So we have big trips, 20,000 every 2 years, and then this community annual trip to some community. What other things?
I want a kayak.
Okay, that's awesome. Okay.
Yeah. I really need somebody to go with me, though.
Wedding expense for your son?
I don't know if I really imagine him getting married all that quickly, but we could throw 10,000 to it or something.
Yeah, and a lot of these, let's just take the wedding as example. We're planning this for retirement. So even if it's 15 years, we want to have placeholders for things.
True.
Just to have them because we'll inflate the numbers.
Yeah.
Now, we know you're going to have vehicles. So tell me about how you guys view cars and how often you buy them and everything else.
We don't buy them very often. So I'm on my 15th or 16th year of my car.
Holy cow.
Yeah. Now it's a thing. It's like I don't want a car payment. I haven't had a car payment in so long, and we paid cash. My husband got a new car 2 years ago, and we paid cash for it. And it has better gas mileage, so that really helps. And my son was starting to drive, so we took the higher mileage car and had him use it. And it's frankly got a lot of miles left on it too. And because I like to do woodworking, I like to have room. And so I have a big car, and actually it's a van. And so I can get a lot of junk in it.
So is this van so old that it has like a mural on the side?
It does not have a mural. There is no wood paneling, and there's no creepy guys hanging around trying to get you in it.
So when do you project that you'll need something new? Obviously, it's going to die at some point.
Honestly, it probably won't die for another 70,000 miles, which at the rate I'm driving is probably another 7 or 8 years. But I really was thinking once our son gets out of college, then we'll just kind of see where we are with everything. So in the next 3 to 4, maybe 5 years.
Okay. So how much was your husband's car?
Well, all out the door, 21,000 or something like that.
Okay.
I think total, because we put some money down, and then we went ahead and we ended up paying it off like right away. They gave you this cashback thing if you got it financed. We financed it literally and paid it off so we could get this cashback thing out of it.
Okay, so I won't put a lot in for cars, but I'll add a car in there.
Yeah.
Out 10,
20 to 30, I think is probably reasonable. 25, maybe split the difference.
Okay. So any other things such as you think you might have to provide care for your parents in retirement, or you think if it happens, it'll be before he retires?
It's just such a of course, my parents are very, very up there in years. His mom is 79. She seems to be doing great. And there's a family member living with her that in our mind can keep an eye on her and make sure she's okay. So, but financially, it's just a black hole. I just don't know.
Okay. Okay.
I do have a few other siblings, and he only has one sibling. So in my mind, I've got a little bit more to spread around if my parents need help.
Okay. Okay. And now any major purchases you can think of that you want to do in retirement? RV, boat, kayak doesn't count as a boat.
We're not really RV boat people. And like I said, kayak maybe, but I'll probably try to find that used on Craigslist. And sorry, I forgot. This is kind of a big one. I want a workshop. And
all right.
So I'm hoping to find, in the area that we were looking in, we were looking at ones that may already have some sort of space that would act as a workshop. Aside from a garage, I kind of wanted a dedicated space where you don't have to worry about the cars going in and out. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that's a big one. So
this would be something you would buy or rent?
It would be a dedicated space that would be on property. Okay. And so it would be like like you see these little structures, like storage building, barn type thing. But I'm hoping that we would find one that was already there. If it's not, it could be probably $35,000 to $50,000 to put one on there. So it's a swinging for the fences thing.
Okay, so this is on the new property, right? So this
is I'm sorry. This is not something now.
No, I'm not worried about now. So this is good. Yeah. So let's assume that's 2021, which is the year that we have him retiring. And even if it's there, you still may need to make it your own, right? There's, if you're going to do it, you want to do it. My wife does woodwork, and she does does furniture, and I get it. You need space, and you got to have things in the right place and everything else. So we'll assume 20,000 in 2021, and I'll put that in the aspirational bucket. Now let's talk about the new house. So, and this is something that Joe's on board with as well, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Big time.
So is the idea that you would buy a house right there at retirement, or is this something you're considering doing before?
We were going to do it actually this year, but we did a test commute with Airbnb, by the way. Sorry, I'm giving them a lot of ads.
That's great, though. You did a test commute.
We did a test commute, and it just was a little bit more than I think he thought it would be. And so that was not really ideal. And my last thing I want to do is put more pressure and more stress onto his workday and, make things so much easier for me, but then things get exponentially harder. And we thought he would be able to work from home, but that looks like it's not really going to work with the model of type of daily work that his job is. So
Right.
It's going to require that he be in the office. So anyway, back to that, we are probably going to do it within a year or two of retiring. I think he'd be able to handle that.
Okay. And it sounds like you're looking at areas that you want to do this in. Do you have an idea of what the home would cost?
At this point, the prices have been kind of going up where we've been looking. We want to downsize, definitely. And I think that we probably will be between $225, $250 as far as the price of a home.
Okay. So what I'm going to put is a new home at Joe's retirement at $250,000.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, do you have big aspirations to leave money to your son or to have gifts throughout retirement, whether it's to him or something you care about?
Well, we've always been, pretty good with charity. As far as, I've always viewed this. I know this is kind of maybe different than some people, I guess, because we never came from any money. My parents were always focused on, we'll take care of ourselves. We'll hopefully set you up to take care of yourself with college. And therefore, we should never have to ask you for money. And that's kind of where it is. And that's how I tend to think of it. I don't particularly feel the need to leave something to him because I think he's going to be set up just fine for himself.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And we share that. And I think most people I interact with feel the same way.
Right. And really, truthfully, if there is money left, I'm hoping that I can make it to the end without ever having to ask him to do anything, but maybe, the basic care that a child would help a parent with, but not financially. But then if for some reason there's money left over, then woohoo, go for it.
So what about Joe? Obviously, he's not here to speak for himself, but if he were to have some wants or wishes that he could imagine, and we might get the chance to ask him this, but since he's not here, what might he say?
Well, I think between us, he doesn't really have like huge, big dreams. And I try to get him to, tell me, think about these things and just, think a little bigger and try to, pull that out of him. And so he's pretty modest about most things. He's very into music. He recently told me he would really like to get a drum set, which I'm a little dubious about, but okay, if that would make him really, really, really happy. So, but as far as big stuff, he's never talked about it.
Okay. No bike trips or, almost every cyclist I know dreams of that epic bicycle they could buy.
That would be great. I don't think he lets himself think that way. He's pretty frugal just by the nature of his personality in that he doesn't really sit around focusing on expensive stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I think if you were able to maybe discuss that with him, he might be able to, come up with some things.
What's interesting about this process of thinking big, and tell me if you feel this, it sounds like you do, is if you're setting yourself up for retirement, if you find so much joy in experiences in each other and you're naturally thinking about the future, it's hard to, almost feel like you're being greedy by thinking of these things.
I think that may be true, especially for him. I just try to keep it within a scope that's not going to cause, it's kind of like if you play today, sometimes you're going to pay tomorrow. And there can be some negatives. And you see people around you do that a lot where they get a little bit, their spending is out of whack with their income. And you just see the pain that could cause people sometimes. And you just don't want to be that person. But sometimes you can go overboard in the other direction.
Yeah, it's very easy to overcorrect.
Right.
And this is
Right.
not the time to do that. So
I will say that we had a conversation one time. I was talking about some biking trails that I had heard of that are kind of almost so you feel like you're not in the city, but you are. And he goes, "Oh, well, my bike doesn't do that. I would need a whatever kind of bike, mountain bike or
mountain
something for
bike,
that."
yep.
And I go, "Well, you could get a mountain bike and have your road bike or whatever, road bike, city bike, whatever you call it." And it was like his head exploded when I said
Don't tell him that I have 4 bicycles.
he's going to hear it if you.
Oh, wait, I just said that. Yeah. There's actually a scientific formula for how many bicycles you should get or you're supposed to have. Did you know that?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Scientists have gotten involved in this.
Yes, it's N plus 1, right? So however many you have plus 1, but then there's another way. I don't know how to express it mathematically. And then 1 less than your wife getting upset and divorcing you.
Oh, yeah, well.
I'm just kidding.
I know.
Okay, so it sounds like I'm just asking these because I feel like you're holding back a little bit. So that's okay, because if you two think of anything, let me know, because we can add this in. We're not done with this process if you guys think of something. I'd rather have it thrown in and negotiated away than not thought of at all.
Right. And that has been a struggle to try to get him, because he, and I would say to his credit, I live a lot of my brain stays a lot of the time in the future. And his is more like, because his job has been like this. My job that I used to have was a planning type job, and I worked a year ahead all the time. I was in the next year constantly. And then other parts of my job, it's the same thing. His job is more, there's a fire, we've got to put it out. So he's very much in the now and whatever's right in front of him, like to the point where I'd say, "Give me some ideas for dinner." And he'd go, "Well, I'm not hungry." So it really, I don't know how to draw that out particularly.
Okay, well, if I have a chance to talk to him, maybe I can prompt him a little bit.
That would be great.
So what we have here is the current version of your ideal retirement, which is when you're both retired, spending $75,000 a year after tax, inflation adjusted. So that would be Joe retiring at 58, and then we got you going out to 100. We have the healthcare costs added in. I'll send out the summary to you so you can see that.
I'm sorry, how long did you say he was going out to?
We have him passing away at age 93.
Okay, because I think you said 58 just now.
No, I'm sorry. He's going to retire at 58.
Right.
Yeah, he's going to retire at 58 and live a ripe old age of 93.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have the healthcare costs factored in. And then I put in 2030, you would spend $21,000 on a car, since you only buy cars every 15 years. So let me know if that date is not correct. But okay. I assumed, since you drive forever, that you'd buy a new van in 2030. Since you don't.
This is the longest I've ever driven a car. Mostly we go about 10 years. So
okay, so let's put that at 2000. You've had that for a long time, so let's put that at, say, we'll put it at retirement.
Okay.
2021. You need a new van if you're going to have a new fancy.
Okay.
And then in 2027, I put $10,000 in for a wedding.
Okay.
Just as a placeholder. We don't know. I don't even know if he's dating anybody, but just if in the event that he finds someone.
Mm-hmm.
And then I put $20,000 occurring every 2 years for 8 times for the big family trips. And that would start when you retired. Okay. So those are those big semi or biannual trips.
Right.
And then I put $3,500 starting at retirement every year for 10 times of those community-based annual trips like we talked about.
Right.
And then at retirement, I put $20,000 for a workshop and $250,000 for a new home. So are there any other things that I missed?
I can't think of anything that pops out.
Okay. Now we have to figure out. So you'll see a timeline with a showing from 2017 all the way out to 2060 of all these cash flows. We just created a cash flow timeline of all the costs associated with what this retirement's going to look like. Mm-hmm. And each year we have different monies coming out to pay for something like retirement and then the house and all these other things. And you'll see that on the chart. And then for everything, I put an inflation factor of 4.07%. So as an example, the $75,000 annual retirement budget for basic living expenses, When we go out to 2042, that's actually 203,000. So this is a really conservative assumption, conservative meaning that it really draws a lot of money from what we're planning. So we'll play with that if we need to later on, but we have to factor in inflation somehow.
Yeah, that's really smart too, because a lot of people forget that.
Yeah. So I'm going to send you a summary of this. And then what we're going to do next time is we're going to, we have all these monies coming out, which is sort of the big sucking sound of money from your life for this lifestyle. Now we got to figure out how to plug the hole with your income sources and your financial assets. And so we'll frame what those are in our next conversation.
Okay.
Sound good? All right. Now we've finished up their ideal retirement. If you're signed up for 6 Shot Saturday, I will send you a summary of that. But now let's turn to you and work on building that ICE plan in the Smart Sprint segment.
On your marks, get set.
Hey, welcome to the Smart Sprint segment, the second iteration of completing, or the second step of completing your in case of emergency worksheet. Now, last week we had you organize those key individuals that somebody needs to call if something happens. Who do you contact first? And we had people like your spouse, family, close friends, attorney, doctor, financial advisor, etc. This week, what I want you to do is put in one place the security codes for your devices. Nowadays we have things like smartphone, iPads and tablets, home computer, office computer, laptop, garage door opener, all these things that require some kind of code to get into, that in the event, say I go into a coma, my wife may need to get into my phone to manage things. A lot of times if you get into the phone or the iPad, you can manage a lot of things just because everything's syncing to it. But in our family, we know what each other's codes are. But if you don't know the code to your wife's computer or smartphone and something happens, you're going to need to have that. So your action item for the next 7 days is to organize and get all of those codes in one place. Now, Frank, a listener of the show, emailed me about how he created a simplified ICE worksheet because he uses something called LastPass, which is a password manager. I use something similar in my life. I use 1Password. Within those, you can put in secure notes, such as who do you call and what are the phone numbers, or device security codes. These are great tools to be able to put all in one place in a secure format using something like a LastPass or a 1Password. All of this information, and then that one code can be shared with key individuals or put in a very safe place. So it's basically the keys to the kingdom. So if you're comfortable using those types of software, I think those are two great options that, nothing is totally secure, but those seem to be the most robust and popular. That would be a great idea. So thanks for the suggestion, Frank. So you have your marching orders. Next week, we'll add another item to creating your ICE worksheet. Hello, and welcome to the Happy Lab. So excited to have you here. I'm happy to have you here, right? So recently, through encouragement from some very good friends that I walk life with, I have started my exercise program before, and I've talked about this, and I think I've had a few restarts. Since my knee surgery back in July, I've been pouting a little bit about exercise. I haven't been able to do the things that I want to be able to do, and I kept telling myself I need to start exercising because I know how it helps me mentally, but honestly, I was just pouting. I was like, whining because I can't do the things I want to do. And I've finally gotten over that through the help of some friends kicking me in the butt. So I've started what called a high intensity interval workout training program, and I'm feeling happier already. So maybe you're not feeling 100%. Maybe you're pouting a little bit about some physical ailment or just feeling old. Get over it. Go exercise. It's good for the mind. It's good for the body. It's good for the soul. Hey, I want to thank you so much for joining me for this extended edition and the first edition of Retirement Plan Live 2017. Make sure you're signed up for 6 Shot Saturday so you can get the details of Kim and Joe's plan and follow along. Until next week, this is Roger Whitney, the Retirement Answer Man.
We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of Retirement Answer Man. Be sure to visit rogerwhitney.com/answers to access the Retirement Answer Library with over 30 checklists to help you make the most of the only life you have. Remember, you have more power than you realize to create an amazing life starting today with Retirement Answer Man. The opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical and no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested into directly. Have a wonderful day.